Monsieur le Président, Madame la Première Dame, Mesdames,
Mr.
Messieurs,
President, Madam First Lady, ladies and gentlemen,
Mesdames, Messieurs, je voulais, à
ladies and
l'issue
gentlemen,
de ce G7 que nous venons de
following
tenir
this G7 meeting that we have just held,
près de 2 jours,
and we've been
évidemment,
discussing
vous rendre compte,
for
mais avant toute chose,
2 days now,
remercier
and I'm
le
going
président
to
Trump,
report back to you. But first of all, I'd like
l'ensemble
to
des chefs
thank
d'État et
President Trump
de
and
gouvernement,
all the heads of state and government
présents pour
present
ce travail
here
extrêmement
for the
productif et
extremely
les très bonnes
productive
discussions, les très
work
bons
and,
échanges que
and
nous
the
avons
very
eus depuis
productive
samedi soir ensemble.
discussions that we've had since
En effet,
Saturday evening
Il y
together.
avait beaucoup de nervosité
There was a lot of
au début de ce
nervousness
G7, beaucoup d'attentes,
at the outset,
parfois
a lot of
beaucoup
expectations,
de tensions, de conflictualité
a lot
qui
of
pouvaient être rapportées.
tensions, and
je
we heard
peux
about a lot
ici
of
vraiment dire que
conflict, and I can
ce à quoi
say
nous avons tenu
that
ensemble tout particulièrement, c'est
what
que
we were
un
really
message
keen
d'unité,
on
un
was to
esprit
convey
positif,
a
des discussions puissent
positive
ressortir, et c'est
and
ce qui est vraiment
joint message
ressorti de nos
following
échanges
our discussions.
sur de nombreux sujets.
Discussions on several
Nous n'avons
topics.
pas négocié, comme je m'y étais engagé, un très long texte.
We haven't
Et
negotiated a very
vous sera
long
remis dans
text
quelques
as
instants une
promised,
seule page de
and you will get
déclaration.
just a
Il y a ensuite
one-page
beaucoup d'annexes,
declaration.
de textes qui ont été
Then there'll be a lot of different
Mais une seule
annexes
page
to it,
qui revient sur
but it's
quelques
just
sujets
one
évidemment
page, a
essentiels,
one page that covers
au-delà des
some of the
discussions et des
key
sessions de travail que nous
items
avons pu
that
Nous
were
avons tenu à faire cette conférence de
addressed.
presse ensemble.
Now,
Je
we
laisse
have
ensuite
decided to
le
hold this
président
joint
Trump,
conference.
la
I'm going to
Première
give
Dame
the
et
floor
l'ensemble de son
to
staff ici dans cette salle pour qu'ils puissent poursuivre
President
sa
Trump,
propre conférence de presse
and
et
of course
répondre
President
à la
Trump
presse
and the
américaine et
First Lady
internationale
will
sur
then proceed with
tous les
their
autres
own
sujets.
press
Et je rendrai
conference
compte
to
de
the
manière
American press,
détaillée
where
un peu
other
plus tard de
discussions
l'ensemble des
will
points
take
sur
place.
lesquels
But
nous
I just
avons
wanted to
réussi
sum up the
à trouver
different
un accord et
items
les
on
avancées
which
sur de nombreux
we
sujets,
have agreed
de la
and the
biodiversité en
topics
passant
on
par le
which we have made
numérique
headway,
et les
biodiversity,
Mais
digital
nous tenions à avoir cette
economy,
conférence de presse
amongst
ensemble
others.
parce
We
que
wanted to hold
l'année
this
prochaine,
joint conference together
ce sont
because
les
next
États-Unis
year
d'Amérique qui auront
it is the
à
United States
accueillir
of
le G7.
America that will
Ce
host the
passage de témoin des
G7
présidents
summit,
à sa présidence
and
est un
we are going
point
to
auquel nous
pass
tenons.
the baton on to
Et puis, je dois vous
President
dire,
Trump. That is
parce
why
que
we are
nous
here
avons,
together.
durant ces 2 jours et
And I
demi, fait
just
beaucoup
wanted
de
to
choses
say that for
ensemble.
the last 2 days we have worked a
On a
lot
sans doute
together
plusieurs points communs, mais
on
l'un tout
several
particulièrement avec le
common
président Trump.
points. Well, we have a
Nous
lot
n'aimons
of
pas perdre
things in
notre temps
common, but one thing we have in
et
common with President
nous
Trump
aimons
is they
avoir des
don't like to
résultats,
waste
des
our
accords
time, and we
et
like
mettre tout le
to
monde dans une
achieve
dynamique positive.
concrete results and to
Et donc,
provide
dès
momentum
l'arrivée du président
to the
Trump,
work.
à
And as
travers
soon
le
as
déjeuner en tête-à-tête que
President
nous avons eu,
Trump
qui, je dois dire, a été
arrived
sans
with
doute une des
the
discussions les plus
one-to-one
productives et les plus riches que nous
lunch
ayons
that we
eues
had together,
ensemble.
and I think that those are the
Nous
most
sommes mis dans
productive
une
and
dynamique qui
interesting
a
conversations
permis
that we've had
véritablement de faire
together.
avancer
And from
nombre
that
de
point
dossiers. Je veux
onward,
vraiment remercier Monsieur le
we
Président pour
set the pace and
esprit
kept
et l'efficacité.
the ball rolling to be
Juste quelques
as
mots sur des
efficient
points qui
as
étaient très
possible till the
attendus, en
very end.
particulier pour nos deux pays.
There
Sur
are a
l'Iran.
few things that are expected from
Sur l'Iran,
both our countries. As far
le
as
président Trump et
Iran
moi-même
is
avons
concerned,
eu
President Trump and myself
des échanges toutes ces dernières semaines, mais particulièrement ces deux
have
derniers
had
jours.
discussions in the last few weeks,
Nous
and
sommes
particularly in the
d'accord
last couple
pour
of
dire que
days,
l'Iran doit
and we
respecter
agree that
ses
Iran
obligations nucléaires,
needs to
doit
comply
avoir un
with its nuclear
comportement
obligations
responsable dans le Golfe
and have
et
responsible
travailler avec nous.
behavior in the Gulf
Et au
and
fond, on a
work
deux choses
with us.
très claires
And there
auxquelles
are
nous tenons.
two very clear things
L'Iran ne
that
doit
matter
jamais
to us.
avoir l'arme nucléaire.
Iran should never
Et cette
have the
situation ne doit pas
nuclear
menacer la
weapon,
stabilité de la région.
and its situation should not threaten the
La France a
stability
pris
of the
plusieurs
region.
initiatives et j'en ai
France
toujours
has
tenu
taken a lot of
informer
different
le président
initiatives,
Trump
and I've always
pour essayer de
informed
trouver les
President
moyens
Trump
techniques
on
de
them
bouger.
to
Parce que
be able to
les
get the
décisions
technical
américaines
means
des
to
derniers
move
mois
forward,
ont mis
because the
beaucoup de pression,
decisions that the
doivent
U.S.
nous mettre en
taken in the
situation
last few
d'améliorer
months have put a lot of pressure
la
and have
sécurité
put
régionale
us
de
in
la
a
région.
situation where it is indeed necessary to improve
Par
the
cette coordination,
security
nous avons pris une
situation
initiative
of the
hier qui a
region.
été de faire
So we
revenir
coordinated
le
our
ministre
efforts,
des
and
Affaires
we
étrangères
reached the
iranien.
decision to bring
Et de
together
nombreux échanges
the
avec le
foreign
ministre
ministers,
français
foreign
qui
minister
ont
of
permis
Iran,
justement de dessiner un chemin.
had a meeting
Rien n'est fait.
with the French foreign minister,
Les choses
and
sont encore éminemment fragiles.
a roadmap
Mais il y a
has
des
sort
discussions
of
qui se sont
been
ainsi
said, but
amorcées
nothing
sur le plan technique
is
avec véritablement
absolutely set in stone,
des
and we will
avancées.
have to move ahead
Et puis ce matin,
together to
le
find
président Rouhani a clairement dit
an
qu'il était
outcome.
prêt à
This morning,
à
President
rencontrer
Rouhani said
tout
that he was
responsable
prepared
politique
to
si c'est dans
meet
l'intérêt de son pays.
any political leader
Ce que j'ai dit
in the interest of his
au
country.
ministre Zarif, ce que j'ai
And
dit
that's what I told
par
Minister
téléphone
Zarif,
au
and this
président
is what I
Rouhani,
mentioned to President Rouhani on the phone as
s'il
well,
acceptait une rencontre
that
avec le président
if he
Trump,
agreed to a meeting with
conviction
President Trump,
est qu'un
that my
accord peut être
conviction
trouvé.
was
On en
that
connaît
an
les termes,
agreement
les
can be
objectifs.
met. We know the terms, we know the objectives, but we have to just now sit around the table and make that happen. So I hope that in the next few weeks, based on our discussions, we will be able to achieve the meeting that we just mentioned between President Rouhani and President Trump, myself and the partners who have a role to play in nuclear negotiations will also be fully involved in these negotiations. And I think that this meeting is very important and in the last few days have clarified the situation. A lot of messages have been conveyed. A lot of work has been done between our ministers. I would like to thank our ministers who have been totally involved in these discussions and have set the stage for these discussions and for an agreement. Of course, I want to be very cautious and very modest, but I think that this is going to lead to putting an end to escalation and reaching a suitable solution. So the discussions that we had on Saturday afternoon and Saturday dinner have been very fruitful, and our purpose is to ensure the stability of the region. The idea is to make sure that Iran doesn't get the nuclear weapon and have more visibility in the long term. As far as trade is concerned, we've also shared a lot of analysis and a lot of observations. Later on, I'll go into the details of that. But I think we can say that our discussions have clarified what is legitimate and what the United States feels is an unfair situation. We have international rules that govern international trade. And in this one-page document, we said that it is very good to have a single organization that governs international trade. But so far, this collective body has not been very efficient in raising trade barriers. It has not been efficient enough in solving problems when they occurred. It has not been efficient enough in protecting the intellectual property of our industries. Discussions are underway currently, in particular between President Trump and President Xi. And we have seen, even in just the recent, very recent past, that an agreement can be reached. So we want to reaffirm our desire to change the rules that govern international trade and revamp them so that no one is dealt with unfairly, so that our workers are protected and so that the situation of the past is put to an end. And this is something that we need to work on together. Now, there was a lot of nervousness because of misunderstanding, because some very powerful economic players could have said, what about this digital tax that France has imposed? Well, we have reached a very good agreement, and once again, the solid work that has been done upstream by our ministers has really helped us to make progress. In our economies, we have very unfair situations where some players don't pay taxes. So there is unfair competition with other players. And it is these large multinational players that don't pay taxes, which leads to significant instability on the economic front. Is this fair? It is not fair. Of course, we are pushing for international rules on this, even. And at the European level, 10 countries, France, Italy, even the UK is getting ready to do so, has decided to do something at the national level. But it is not against any company in particular. It's just to solve the problem. In fact, a lot of French companies will also be impacted by this tax. And some of you have probably heard me say a few months ago that this is only to find a solution. And the aim, ultimately, is to find an agreement internationally by 2020 to revamp international tax systems within the framework of the OECD to combat harmful trade practices, which are also harmful to the U.S. economy. And through this digital tax, on this digital tax, we worked a lot bilaterally as well, and we have reached an agreement to overcome the hurdles. So we're going to work on a bilateral and multilateral basis to find a solution together. And the day international tax exists on digital services, France will do away with its national tax. And everything that has already been paid under the French tax system will be reimbursed. So the idea is that we need to find a joint agreement in order to address joint international problems. And the situation right now is very negative, and the international tax system definitely needs to be modernized. And I think we will work together in a spirit of cooperation on this. As to Libya, Syria, North Korea, Hong Kong, you will see in the one-page document that we have made considerable headway in the spirit of unity, and we have also done some significant work in, as far as the Amazon region is concerned. There have been relations with President Bolsonaro, and we have taken a very ambitious initiative that President Pinheiro presented this morning after having discussed with all the heads of state and government of the region, as we had wished and as President Trump had wished as well. I don't want to go into the details, but I just wanted to highlight these few things that I just mentioned. I just wanted to say that we worked together hand in hand with President Trump over these 2 days. And during this G7, and I would like to thank all my colleagues, in fact, for this, we have managed to reach convergence at unprecedented levels on several issues. And now we're going to continue this work in the weeks and months to follow with a lot of energy. And North Korea knows how strongly President Trump is committed to this issue. There's also the agreement with China, and we're going to work hand in hand on all of the different issues. I would like to thank you, President Trump, for your involvement in the last couple of days. I would like to thank your First Lady, who was by your side and who has been very active side by side with my own spouse, and she has honored us and in our country. She knows how popular she is in our country, and President Trump will be hosting the G7 summit next year, so I'm going to give him the floor so that he can tell us how you intend to organize the G7, and I will be there by your side with the same will and the same determination and the same desire for unity. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you very much, and I think more importantly than anything, I wanted to come up here to say that because the job that President Macron and your wife, by the way, who is a great lady, Bridget, would like to thank Bridget. She has been spectacular, spent a tremendous amount of time with Melania and some of the folks who came in, some of the wives that came in, and they had a great tour of the area, and it's a beautiful area. But I want to thank you very much, Mr. President, for the incredible job you did. This is a truly successful G7. There was tremendous unity. There was great unity. Sometimes I'd read a little bit of false reporting, and I will tell you there was, in fact, we would have stayed for another hour. Nobody wanted to leave. We were accomplishing a lot, but I think more importantly, we were getting along very well. 7 countries, and it really was the G7, and you have been a spectacular leader on this. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank the great country of France. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the Thank you, my friend.
And with that, I think, excuse me, I was, go ahead, let's go.
No, I just wanted to say we will take 2 questions from each side. Afterwards, I will say goodbye to my friend President Trump. I will leave the room in order for you to follow up with your
If you'd like, we
conference.
could do 2 each, and then we'll both leave the room. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer 10? I just don't want to have the President of France standing here while I'm answering these absolutely wonderful questions, okay? So why don't we start with a question for France?
These 4 questions are about G7, US-Franco relations.
And Emmanuel is going to have his own press conference after this.
Exactly.
So that'll be fine. Go ahead. To France, John. To France.
Thank you, Marco. Of course, they are the host country. They should go first. Monsieur le Président Macron, China was not on the official agenda, but it was certainly a big part of the discussions here at the G7. Are you concerned that the trade war that exists now between the United States and China could harm the global economy? If you are, did you talk to President Trump about that? And are you also at the same time concerned that if China's current trade practices go unchecked, that a decade from now we could be in a very terrible situation?
Sur ce sujet, nous en avons évidemment longuement
On this
discuté
subject, we obviously had lengthy discussions
durant la session sur l'économie mondiale
during the
d'hier matin.
session on the world economy yesterday morning,
Sur vos deux sujets.
on both subjects.
Les discussions qui sont en cours entre
The
la Chine et
discussions
les
underway
États-Unis
between
d'Amérique,
China and the United States of
évidemment,
America
elles créent, on le voit bien,
obviously,
des
as we
incertitudes
clearly see,
qui
create
agitent les marchés, les
uncertainty,
investisseurs,
which disturb
et qui,
markets
pendant le
and
temps de la négociation,
investors,
créent des
and
tensions,
during the
qui est le
negotiations
cas
will
de
create
toute
tensions,
discussion.
which is the case of any
Et
discussion.
on l'a vu sur les
We saw
différents marchés
this
actions
on
que
different
nous
stock
connaissons.
markets
Maintenant, la question,
with
c'est
which we're familiar.
l'issue de ces
Now the
discussions.
question is to know what the result of these
Pourquoi-
discussions
ce à
will
quoi
be.
nous sommes attachés sur
And
ce
that's
point,
why
c'est qu'un accord puisse être
we
trouvé
considered that it was so important an
les
agreement
deux
be
premières
found
puissances économiques.
between the two greatest
Président
economic
Trump
powers
nous
in
a
the world.
clairement indiqué sa volonté de
President
trouver un
Trump
accord.
clearly showed us
Nous
his
avons d'ailleurs
willingness
noté
to arrive at an
encore il y a
agreement.
quelques heures
We saw just a
des
few
messages
hours
plutôt
ago
positifs,
the very
encourageants,
positive and
qui ont pu être
encouraging
distillés.
message that
On
could
voit
be
que les choses
distilled
bougent.
from this. We see that things are
Mon souhait
moving.
très profond, c'est qu'un accord puisse
Our
être trouvé
deep
entre les
wish is
États-Unis
for an
d'Amérique
agreement to be
et
found
la Chine
between the
sur le plan
United
commercial.
States and
Je
China
pense que ce sera
concerning trade,
positif.
because I think
Tout le
that would
monde.
be something positive for everyone.
Ni les États-Unis ni la Chine ne sont
Neither
naïfs
the United
sur le plan
States nor
politique, sur le
China
plan économique et
is
industriel. Donc, cet
economically
accord
or
devra être
industrially naive.
équilibré pour être
It has to
bon
be a
de
balanced
tous les côtés.
agreement that will be good for
Nous
everyone.
veillons à ce qu'il soit bon pour
And
l'ensemble
we
du globe.
will be vigilant to
donc,
see that it's
dans ce
good for the whole
contexte-là,
world. In that
Les
context,
paramètres pris en compte, ça a été aussi
our
l'objet
different
de notre
parameters will be taken on board, and that was one of the subjects of our discussion. What's bad for the world economy is uncertainty, and the quicker an agreement is arrived at, the quicker that uncertainty will dissipate. That's what we discussed yesterday, and that's the American president's wish. In terms of trade practices, I said this earlier, for me, the most effective way forward and the most strategic way forward in settling our trade relations with China is to develop trade, but also to ensure that that trade is part of international trade rules. The problems we sometimes had, we're very familiar with this with the Chinese economy. It's a major economy where there's been lots of investment from the United States, European countries, Canada, and Japan. The problem is respecting intellectual property, dealing with excess capacity, which sometimes unbalances some world markets, and the ability to deal rapidly with conflicts we may have and with unfair situations. Now, we are obliged to see that when this type of trade happens outside of WTO rules, things don't work very well and we're not properly protected. And when we follow WTO rules, the WTO rules as they presently exist haven't allowed us to be protected on these subjects. So what we decided together yesterday morning was to accelerate with a very realistic agenda and to say we're going to change the rules of world trade so that everyone can have free and fair trade, balanced trade, and that the subjects which I've just mentioned, which have sometimes been bad for our economies, can be settled in an international framework which we wish profoundly to change. And we and our different ministers in the different contexts that we're putting forward are going to share these political goals. And to my way of thinking, the way to deal with the practices you have mentioned, certainly the positive agreements that will be arrived at, and also the renewal of our international trade rules, as we said yesterday morning.
President Trump, are you satisfied with how far the proposed WTO reforms will go? Because
no, I'm not.
You have spoken about the need for that, and second to that,
we're getting there, John. Just to answer that,
second
we're getting
to that,
there.
do you believe that China is sincere about what it said this morning,
yes,
or do you think that they are just trying to calm the markets and play for time? Because our sister network, the Fox Business Network, has been told by Chinese sources that they have no plans on going back to where they were in terms of the negotiations this spring on intellectual property, forced technology transfer, ownership. So
we'll see, John.
Do you trust that they are sincere
I
about
do.
this.
I think they want to make a deal very badly. I think that was elevated last night, very late in the night. I see an alert, or as you would call it, breaking news. And it was that the vice chairman, we're not talking about somebody from China at a low level, the vice chairman of China came out that he wants to see a deal made. He wants it to be made under calm conditions, using the word calm. I agree with him on that. And China has taken a very hard hit over the last number of months. You know, they've lost 3 million jobs. It'll soon be much more than 3 million jobs. Their chain is breaking. The chain is breaking up like nobody's seen before. And once that happens, it's very hard to put it back together. You understand? I think they very much want to make a deal. And the longer they wait, the harder it is to put it back, if it can be put back at all. So I believe they want to do a deal. The tariffs have hit them very hard. In a fairly short period of time, the United States will have collected over $100 billion in tariffs. And I say it again, the media failed to acknowledge it. But if you look at the goods coming in from China, we're talking about China, not other countries. If you look at the goods, they have a power that others don't have. But that power is only good for so long. They've manipulated their currency, they've devalued their currency, and they put a lot of cash into the system. And because of that, the prices have not gone up, or if they've gone up, it's been very little, because they want to keep people working. If the prices go up, they're not going to be able to keep people working. They're not going to be able to compete. It's a brilliant market. It's a brilliant, brilliant market, the world market. A lot of markets are brilliant. And frankly, I think that China cannot, I don't know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. I don't think they can do that. And I think they're very smart. And I think President Xi is a great leader who happens to be a brilliant man. And he can't lose 3 million jobs in a very short period of time. And that's going to be magnified many times over. And it's going to break down the Chinese system of trade. And he can't do that. So when you say, do you think they want to? Maybe they want to and maybe they don't. But I think they want to make a deal. I'm not sure they have a choice. And I don't say that as a threat. I don't think they have a choice. In the meantime, the United States, which has never collected 10 cents from China, will, in a fairly short period of time, be over $100 billion in tariffs. So I think they want to make a deal very badly. Go ahead.
Deuxième question.
Second question.
Messieurs les présidents, Mathieu Koch, BFM TV.
Mr. President, you've just declared that you've created the conditions for a meeting between President Trump and President Rouhani. Does that mean that France, for instance, might be a mediator in that meeting? And more concretely, what did you discuss in terms of that possible agreement with Iran? Then a question for Mr. Trump. Are you ready to lift or to soften American sanctions on Iranian oil exports, and would you be ready to meet President Rouhani? Thank you.
Sur la première question.
On the first question,
Les termes de la discussion.
the terms of the discussion are quite simple.
Un accord a été signé en 2015.
An agreement was signed in 2015.
Le 14 juillet 2015.
On July 14th, we call it the JCPOA.
Et cet accord a
And that agreement
des garanties pour la communauté internationale,
set forth guarantees for the international community, including the signatories of that agreement, saying that Iran would no longer enrich uranium over a certain period of time. I'm simplifying this, but up to 2025, in exchange for reopening many economic sectors and massive investment, largely made by the United States. That agreement had a twofold advantage: stability and security, and also reopening, economically speaking, which was good for Iran. This agreement also had drawbacks and shortcomings. French negotiators in 2015 were the most determined, and France was the country that hesitated most to sign this agreement because we considered we needed as many guarantees as possible. President Trump, during his campaign, made a commitment to those who voted for him to be more demanding and tougher because he considered that this agreement was insufficient, which caused him to leave it. Today, because of the sanctions made by President Trump, the Iranian economy is having serious consequences and a serious slowdown. And that situation very clearly is the aspect, we might say the positive side of things, from one standpoint, is creating pressure and therefore the necessary conditions to improve the terms of an agreement. On the other hand, it's leading to reactions in Iran who are saying, well, we've signed this agreement, but those who have signed it are not respecting its terms, and so we're starting symbolically to enrich uranium, and they risk that they're going to go further still and leave the JCPOA. So, given the two goals that we have, where are we going with this? We need to be sure that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon and that there will be no flare-ups in the region. And so what we discussed very concretely was to see how we could improve very considerably, or really, in fact, build a new nuclear agreement with Iran. President Trump was very clear, saying that we would need a much longer time frame for it, that there needed to be surveillance of many more sites, and this is how we can build a much further reaching agreement in terms of our security demands. And on the other hand, we need to convince the Iranians to go in that direction, and we can do that if we give them economic compensation of some form. If we make some movement in terms of lines of credit or reopening certain economic sectors. I can't tell you today publicly more about this because anything I will tell you in detail will jeopardize the conversations we're going to have. But this is basically what we're discussing. On the basis of our initiative, there's also a Japanese initiative. I'm talking in total transparency with the president, but we agreed on a strategic goal, and I want us to go further in this framework and to make proposals. At a given point in time, there will have to be a meeting between the American and the Iranian presidents, and I would wish that in coming weeks, such a meeting take place. France will play a role together with the other signatories who are our partners in the JCPOA. But after that, we'll need to create the necessary conditions, because we'll have the necessary visibility for this agreement to be signed and sealed, and for this meeting between the two presidents to take place. So I would rather talk about concerted initiatives and exchanges rather than mediation, because at the end of the day, we have constant exchanges with President Trump. I share his goals. Sometimes we say we don't agree on methods, but I want to get there. I want to have an agreement. And I think there's been a true change. This morning, President Rouhani showed himself to be open to this meeting happening. And President Trump has been saying for weeks that he's being demanding, he's being tough, he's put forward sanctions, but I'm ready to have a meeting to make a deal. And I think that we're making progress. I want this meeting to happen, and I want there to be an agreement between the United States and Iran. And France will play the role it is meant to play together with the United Kingdom, with Germany, and all of the other signatory powers and the permanent members of the Security Council.
Iran is a country that is not the same country that it was 2.5 years ago when I came into office. Iran was the #1 state of terror throughout the world. There were 18 sites of confliction in my first week when I spoke with the folks at the Pentagon, including lots of generals and lots of other military experts. 18 sites of confliction, meaning 18 sites of big problems. Every one of them was backed by Iran, or in some cases actually using Iranian soldiers, but at a minimum Iranian wealth, much of it given in the ridiculous deal where they were given $150 billion plus $1.8 billion in cash, and they used that money for some bad purposes. With that being said, I think that Iran is a country of tremendous potential. We're not looking for leadership change. We're not looking for that kind of change. This country has been through that many times before. That doesn't work. We're looking for no nuclear weapons, no ballistic missiles, and a longer period of time. Very simple. We can have it done in a very short period of time. And I really believe that Iran can be a great nation. I'd like to see that happen. But they can't have nuclear weapons. Okay? Thank you. Excuse me? If the circumstances were correct or the right, I would certainly agree to that. But in the meantime, they have to be good players. You understand what that means? And they can't do what they were saying they're going to do, because if they do that, they're going to be met with really very violent force. We have no choice. So I think they're going to be good. I really think they'd like to. And by the way, President Macron told me every step that he was making yesterday. A lot of you said, oh, he came in. He told me long before he came in, what was happening, I didn't think it was appropriate to meet yesterday, too soon, and things have to be worked out first, but President Macron told me exactly what was happening, who was coming, what time they were coming, where they were going to meet, and after the meeting, he told me exactly what happened, and I think he had a very positive meeting. Prime Minister Abe of Japan, also a large purchaser of oil from Iran, he was also very much involved, and look, he knows everybody there, so he was a very, very positive force. But I have to tell you, the president's done an excellent job, and we're going to see how it all turns out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I say it all the time about everything. Maybe it works, and maybe it doesn't. But I'll tell you what, we made a ridiculous deal. We gave him $150 billion, we gave him $1.8 billion, and we got nothing. We got nothing. And by the way, that agreement was so short-term that it expires in a very short period of time. With a country, you don't make a deal that short. Countries last for long times, and you don't do short-term deals, especially when you're paying that kind of money. So I have good feelings about Iran. I have good feelings that it'll work. I know many Iranians living in New York City. I have many friends from Iran. They're incredible people, incredible people. So the last thing I'd like to see is a big problem, but we have to do what we have to do. Okay? Go ahead, please. No, you first. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. President Macron, did you seek President Trump's permission before you invited Foreign Minister Zarif, or did you simply inform him that he was coming?
Thanks for this very precise question. No, but to be very clear, and we are part of the JCPOA. We decided to remain in this deal. So we are very much interested by the situation as a sovereign country. That's why we want the different parties to move. On the other side, as President Trump made it very clear over the summer, we never spoke on behalf of other countries. We just tested some solutions and to see if we can find an agreement with different countries. So we took an initiative this summer to make a proposal, a technical one. I got the reaction from Iran through President Zarif's visit on Friday morning in Paris. After the discussion we had at the G7 dinner on Saturday evening, I thought that it was very clear about where we can go together. So the day after, I decided to invite, as friends, Minister Zarif. So I informed, before making it, I informed President Trump that it was my idea not to involve the United States, not to say this is on behalf of you, of everybody, but to say, as friends, I think it would be a good idea to ask him to go back and try to negotiate something separately. So I did it on my own. I informed, before making it, President Trump. He was informed at each minute about the situation. And the idea for me was, in case of structural move and important move and appropriate solutions, perhaps to have meetings between ministers, not at President Trump's level, because President Trump's level is President Rouhani. So this is my precise answer. This is a French initiative, but made by a clear information of the US president before, information as well of the three Europeans, and each time I informed President Trump in order to monitor the situation and to appreciate together if something more was adapted.
I have to say the JCPOA was a bad deal, should not have been entered into. A lot of things could have happened that would have been much different. They're allowed to test ballistic missiles. You're not allowed to go to various sites to check. And some of those sites are the most obvious sites for the creation or the making of nuclear weapons. And those things have to be changed, and other things have to be changed. And I will tell you, I have very good feelings about it. I think that we're going to do something. It may not be immediately, but I think ultimately we're going to do something. As I said, Iran is a much different country than it was 2.5 years ago. And we can get that back, and I'd encourage it. I actually had friends years ago, many years ago, they were in the real estate business, and they were in Iran, and they were building houses and building housing and building office buildings and apartment houses, and they did very well. They made a lot of money, and to this day, they're not exactly the youngest developers anymore, but I tell you, they were young when they went over there. They made a lot of money, and they loved the people, and they loved what was going on. And it's a country with tremendous potential. I also say that, by the way, with respect to North Korea. Kim Jong-un, who I've gotten to know extremely well, First Lady has gotten to know Kim Jong-un, and I think she'd agree with me. He is a man with a country that has tremendous potential. You're in between China, Russia, and South Korea. People want to get to South Korea. They got to get there somehow, and if they're going to do anything other than essentially fly, they want to go through. So railroads and everything else, so many things want to happen there. I think that North Korea has tremendous economic potential, and I think that Kim Jong-un sees that. He would be the leader, and I think he sees the tremendous potential that it's got. With respect to Iran, the same thing. Iran is incredible people and incredible country potentially, location that's a little rough neighborhood, but eventually it's going to be a beautiful neighborhood. I think that it's going to work out. And I really believe that those countries that went into the original deal, that more and more are agreeing with what I did. But I think those countries are going to be saying thank you someday. I hope they're going to be saying, including France, including the president, because I think we did the right thing. I know we did the right thing. If for no other reason, it's just too short. It's almost expiring, if you think about it. And somebody said, well, you'll go and make an extension. No, they're great negotiators. Look at what they did to get the deal. Look at what they did to John Kerry and to President Obama. Look what happened, where they're bringing plane loads of cash, plane loads, big planes, 757s, Boeing 757s, coming in loaded up with cash. What kind of a deal is that? So I think a lot of good things are going to happen. And I just want to say this because I've spoken a lot with the president this last 2.5 days. We've never had a better relationship. We had a lunch that lasted for quite a while that many of you got to see. It was the two of us. No staff, no anything. He wasn't trying to impress his people. I wasn't trying to impress his people. We were just trying to impress each other. And I'll tell you what, it was the best period of time we've ever had. And we accomplished a lot. I don't mean just, gee whiz, wasn't that nice? He's a very capable man. He's doing a great job for France. He did an incredible job for the G7, and I just want to thank you. And you go ahead to your news conference, and very special. This was a very special, very unified 2.5 days, and I want to thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I will leave the floor and the press conference to President Trump, and I will wait for the end of your own press conference. Voilà, finalement. Je ferai une conférence de presse. Je vous laisse la poser au président. Allez-y.
I don't want to give anything away, but we saw your wife, the First Lady, drink a glass of French wine yesterday. So can you perhaps give up on your threat to put sanctions on French wine? Because if we've understood correctly, you have arrived at an agreement on taxing digital firms. Could you confirm that there has been an agreement between you and France on taxing digital firms?
I can confirm that the First Lady loved your French wine, okay? All right? She loved your French wine. So thank you very much. That's fine. You go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci à vous. I will wait for the end of this press conference to have the press conference of the presidency. I will leave the floor to you. Thank you.